What's up guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you're doing good. In today's video, we're going to be explaining everything that you can do in the ocean in Valheim. This includes several different things like how to fish, how to sail, how to deal with serpents, how to deal with turtles, and which boat is best, plus a few other things. So we're calling this video Valheim Beginner's Guide to the Ocean. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let's jump into it. Serpents. So I wanted to start out with some of the more critical stuff that you probably want to know if you're clicking on an ocean guide on YouTube. So let's start out with the serpents. First of all, I wanted to show what not to do. It's much more likely for a serpent to spawn when you're in the ocean biome at night. And what you absolutely don't want to happen is to end up facing a serpent whilst you only have a raft. So I would actually avoid sailing altogether unless you absolutely have to while you only have a raft. Or at least if you have to sail with a raft, try and only do it during the day. And that way, the chances of you being attacked by a serpent are drastically reduced. One last thing, you can check the mini-map in the top right to see if you are officially in the ocean biome. So if you're not, there's less chance of you seeing a serpent. And of course, we'd all like to avoid this. The easiest way to deal with serpents is really just to shoot them with a bow and arrow. I personally use frost arrows for this, as they seem particularly effective, but other late game arrows should also work just fine, as once you start getting into the late game gear, you realize that the serpent doesn't have that much HP. So if you just want to kill a serpent, I would use a bow and arrow. The next thing I want to say is, I would actually recommend always trying to kill a serpent, and maybe even marking the location of where the serpent spawned on the map, because they do tend to respawn in the same locations, because the food that you get from a serpent is actually really good. You should get 6 pieces of serpent meat from a serpent, and that meat can just be cooked right away to give you some really decent food very quickly. And if you use a cauldron and combine it with mushrooms and honey, it actually makes serpent stew, which is one of the best food items in the game. So serpents are actually an amazing food resource. We can see here that cooked serpent meat gives you 70 health, 40 stamina, has a 2000 second duration, and gives you a 3 HP tick in healing. And we can see here that serpent stew gives you 80 health, 80 stamina, has a 2400 second duration, and gives you a 4 HP tick of healing. So again, very good food. I highly recommend farming some serpents once you've got some of the later game gear. Next, I want to talk about boats real quick. So the way the boats work in this game is that starting with the raft, each boat, as it increases in size and material requirements, also increases in speed and HP. So the bigger the boat, the better, always. The carve also has some storage, and the longship has the most storage. But what I want to talk about is the carve is capable of outrunning a serpent, but it has less HP than a longship. And the longship is even faster, but has so much HP that it's extremely unlikely that you die to a serpent as long as you're shooting it with some bow and arrow, unless you've already taken a load of damage before you set sail. So as long as you're setting sail with a full HP longship, you should basically be totally safe using this boat. To craft a raft, you need 20 wood, 6 leather scraps, and 6 resin. To craft a carve, you need 30 fine wood, 10 deer hide, 20 resin, and 80 bronze nails. And to craft a longship, you need 100 iron nails, 10 deer hide, 40 fine wood, and 40 ancient bark. So now I want to talk about turtles real quick, or I guess technically leviathans. But let's be real, this totally looks like a giant turtle shell, and it should become very clear why I wanted to talk about these two things next, because after this I will be coming back to the serpent. The leviathan is a giant creature that appears as an island. They are non-hostile, so you don't have anything to worry about. And on these leviathan islands you find abyssal barnacles, and each of these barnacles has a 10% chance to trigger the leviathan to start sinking. This is signaled by a loud howling sound, and you have approximately 20 seconds before the leviathan sinks after you hear the sound. So all I would say about this is just make sure you have enough stamina before it sinks, because you'll only take damage from this if you have 0 stamina, because once you get to 0 stamina, you'll no longer be able to swim and you'll be drowning. So it seems weird at first, but it's pretty easy to survive. And for mining these barnacles, which require a pickaxe to mine, it can be any pickaxe, you actually get this chitin material. I'm not sure how you really say this, but I'm going to go with chitin. But with this material, you can actually make an abyssal razor, which is just a knife, and the abyssal harpoon. For the knife, it requires 4 fine wood, 20 chitin, and 2 leather scraps. It works just like all the other knives in the game. It has 12 pierce, 12 slash, 10 times backstab, 10 knockback, and is not one of the best weapons, but if you think knives are fun, this could be a cool one to run. The abyssal harpoon, however, is actually really cool. It requires 8 fine wood, 30 chitin, and 3 leather scraps. So pretty easy to craft as long as you find one of these leviathans. And with the harpoon, you can throw it at enemies and it will actually tie the enemy to you, which can be really funny. But the main usage of this harpoon is for the serpents. So let's go back to serpents. So with the harpoon, you can actually drag the serpent to the shore. The way to do this is to get close to the serpent and just use left click to attack with the harpoon. I would recommend using a long ship, because by the time you've dragged it to shore, the serpent will probably get quite a few hits in. But with the long ship, your boat will have enough HP so that you won't get sank. And then you really just want to go to the nearest beach on the slower speed setting for the boat. The long ship is really fast, so even just on the second speed setting, the line will actually break and you will actually potentially lose the serpent. I have seen people recommend baiting the serpent to the shore before you do this, which is an option, but actually just using a full HP long ship and using the slower setting to go to the shore is really easy, and it worked every single time I tested it. This is a really fun thing to do in the game. Why would you ever need to do this, you might ask? Well, when you kill a serpent scales actually do drop, but they sink to the bottom of the ocean. So by dragging the serpent to shore, the scales will actually drop on the ground, which allows you to collect them. And with these scales, you can actually craft what is probably the coolest looking item in the game, which is the serpent shield. Unfortunately, the serpent shield isn't the best shield in the game, but if you can get access to this thing in the early game, it's still worth it, because it is a really good item for the early game. Even though it looks quite small, it does actually count as a tower shield, so you can't parry with it, which is a real shame. So this is more of an item you get just to flex with, to just get for a fun activity, but it is not as good as the late game gear. To craft the serpent shield, you'll need 10 fine wood, 4 iron, and 8 serpent scales. By the way, you can see here in this example that even though the ship took several hits from the serpent doing this, it still has plenty of HP left. Okay, we're getting towards the end of the video now, so I want to cover a few more basic things just to make sure this is a complete guide for the ocean. So first up is sailing. So the first thing to note before setting sail is that in the bottom left of the mini map, there's a little arrow which shows you which direction the wind is blowing. So generally, you might want to wait until the wind is blowing in the direction that you actually want to travel in before going and exploring the ocean. The main thing to note when you're hopping a boat is the UI on the right. You can see that we've got the boat in the middle of this circle, and then there is a wind icon that represents the angle at which the wind is blowing against the sail. Basically, if this icon is white, that means that your sails are catching some wind, and if it's black, it means that they're not. All boats go fastest when the wind icon is directly at the back of the boat. Boats also have 3 different speed settings. Each one is represented by a little arrow. Just one arrow means that you're actually manually paddling the boat and that you're not using your sails. And you want to use this setting when you're not catching any wind. So when the wind icon on the right is actually black, just make sure you put it down to the 1 arrow setting. Then there's the 2 arrow setting, which is a little bit faster, but it requires some wind. And the 3 arrow setting is the fastest, but this also requires wind. One other thing to note about these settings is that the slower the setting you use, the sharper your boat will actually turn. So if you need to do some tricky maneuvering, it's worth slowing down. The modder ability. So after defeating modder, if you hang a trophy at the megalith, you'll see that it says always tailwind when sailing. What this means is whichever direction you point your boat in, the wind will change direction to blow in that exact direction and therefore allow you to travel a lot faster. So this ability was worth mentioning because if you're going to be doing a lot of sailing, it really helps. So last but not least is fishing. Fish is one of the better food items in the game, especially if you're making fish wraps. And if you get fish in the early game, then it's especially good. And the simplest way to get fish is to buy a fishing rod and bait from the trader. The fishing rod is 350 gold and bait is only 10 gold for a stack of 50, and 50 bait will last a while. As far as fishing itself goes, you want to head to the coast. You just walk along the coast until you find a patch of water that you can actually see some fish in. Then you hold left click and let go. The longer you hold left click, the longer your cast will be. Then you just want to wait until a fish bites the hook, and as soon as he bites, just hold right click to reel him in. Reeling a fish in will actually consume stamina, so just to make sure that you catch as many fish as possible and don't lose any, I actually recommend eating a decent meal so you have a decent stamina bar before you start fishing. The bigger the fish, the more fish meat you will collect. Once a fish is reeled in close, by the way, you have to mouse over to it and press E to grab it. Fish meat can be cooked at a cooking station to make cooked fish meat, which gives you 45 health, 25 stamina. It has a duration of 1,200 seconds and a 2 HP tick. And fish wraps requires 2 cooked fish and 4 barley flour, and it gives you 60 health, 90 stamina. It has a duration of 2,400 seconds and a 4 HP tick. Alright guys, that's just about going to do it for this video. I hope you found this useful. Thanks so much for watching. I do make Valheim videos every week, so make sure you subscribe for future content. I also stream pretty much every day on this channel, so if you're interested in that, subscribe for that too. I stream on Twitch also, so I'll leave a link in the description for that. And if you'd like to support the stream financially and help keep the content alive, you can check out the Patreon at patreon.com/nickrawcliffe or the donation link in the description. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, have a good one.